Good morning. My name is Jamieson Greene, and today I'm presenting on my senior thesis titled The Ethics of Synthetic Meat Production, a Utilitarian Analysis. Let me paint you a scene. You're in the car, windows down, music on. You're in line at McDonald's. As you approach the window to order, a multitude of thoughts rush through your head. Should I get a hamburger or chicken nuggets? Do I get fries? If so, small, medium, or large? You're expected to make all of these decisions and countless others before the car in front of you rushes off. Faced with so many questions, can anyone really blame you for not also asking and answering, what are the ethics of eating a Big Mac? And yet, food is everywhere. It is essential for nutrition, provides satisfaction, and is a source for joy, creativity, and expression. With food so central to our daily lives, I set out to answer this very question posed before you in my senior thesis. Now, as a philosophy major, the word ethics immediately jumps out to me. This word carries such varied and disparate meanings depending on who you're asking. If you're talking to Aristotle, he'll tell you about virtue and habituation. If you ask Kant, he'll tell you about universal respect. I'm talking about neither. Rather, I decided to frame my conversation of ethics in terms of utilitarianism. So, what's utilitarianism? As I expect many of you have at least a vague understanding of it, I'll keep my description brief. But this theory was proposed by Jeremy Bentham and then later expanded upon by John Stuart Mill. Fundamental to the theory is the greatest happiness principle, which states that what is right is what produces the most happiness for the greatest amount of people. Happiness is further defined as what maximizes pleasure and minimizes pain. Also, it's important to note that the philosophers include animals in their moral community, with Bentham saying that the fundamental criterion is whether they suffer. Now, while this isn't the core focus of my paper, one of my fundamental arguments is that utilitarianism does not support factory farming. I argue that happiness is not maximized under this system, which impoverishes the farmer, brutally treats and slaughters the animal, and afflicts the consumer both environmentally and economically. Looking at these statistics, you can see that happiness is not maximized under this system, which increases pain and decreases pleasure. Ruminating on these statistics, I decided to look into alternatives to factory farming. Now, I'm sure many of you are familiar with or have at least tried a plant-based patty like the Beyond Burger or the McPlant, which are widely available for purchase. However, I recognize not everyone wants to give up eating meat, and I don't think they should have to. This led me to another alternative, synthetic meat. Synthetic meat is essentially real meat without slaughter. It's made by harvesting loose muscle cells from the living animal, which are then cultured using tissue engineering from a small amount of muscle to a larger muscle cell mass or tissue. From a singular 0.5 gram sample, which is collected at no harm to the animal, scientists are able to create up to 80,000 burgers. While synthetic meat is still developing as an industry, it is rapidly growing. This slide shows just a couple of the companies currently working on the commercial production of synthetic meat. You might be familiar with Just Eats, which is on the lower left corner of this slide, but they sell their plant-based eggs at Trader Joe's and Target. And they're another company that in Singapore, actually, they're the first to introduce synthetic meat directly to the customer at their restaurant. Another company, Future Meat, is really exciting in its more economical production of synthetic chicken, having already broken the $5 cost barrier. Now, returning to my utilitarian analysis, I created a pleasure-pain scale. I'll begin with the advantages to synthetic meat production. In terms of the environment, synthetic meat is estimated to require 78 to 96% lower greenhouse gas emissions, 99% lower land use, and 82 to 96% lower water use. Looking at public health, synthetic meat does not require antibiotics. This eliminates the risk of zoonotic diseases and infections. Additionally, scientists are able to create healthier meats. They can replace the saturated fat with omega fatty acids and increased vitamins and nutrients. Looking at the economy, synthetic meat would allow the $38 billion that currently goes to subsidizing factory farms every single year be spent on projects that are more beneficial both inside and outside the food industry. Last, synthetic meat presents a major win for animal welfare. It does not require the animal to die and would allow the 55 billion animals that are slaughtered on factory farms every year to be saved from countless suffering. Now, looking at pain, I noted that price and social impact to be synthetic meat's largest hurdles in terms of acceptance. So as you can see, we have the economy on both sides of our scale. Although synthetic meat's price has dropped significantly since it was first introduced and is expected to fall further as the industry grows, it is still more expensive than meat purchased from factory farms. I argue that to be a true alternative, it would need to reach price parity. Synthetic meat also faces a social problem. When I was explaining my thesis to a family friend a couple of weeks ago, her response was, "God didn't intend for us to eat that." I think her reluctance speaks to a broader hesitancy to try lab-grown meat. Food is tied up with social and cultural mores, and meat itself seems to symbolize American farmers, American freedom, American values. Synthetic meat, therefore, is seen as a challenge to this view of Americanism, a threat to an accepted way of life. So, I applied my Mill's greatest happiness principle to synthetic meat and ultimately determined that synthetic meat produces more total happiness. I argue that synthetic meat increases pleasure and decreases pain for the animal, overall society, and the individual. Therefore, I argue that synthetic meat is a more ethical alternative, and it would allow us all to eat Big Macs without a side of ethical crisis and fries. Thank you.
Curious about how you first thought about combining philosophy and food into such an interesting topic.
Oh, well, thank you for your question. So my advisor was Professor Sridhar, and she was my ultimate inspiration behind this project as well. My freshman year, actually in KHC, my seminar was the ethics of food, and so that's where I first came to terms with not only our food production system and some of the ethical questions that arise from that, but also that's where I first learned about synthetic meat in the first place. And this project really spiraled from there.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. It was fantastic to listen to. I have a question about what happens to all of the livestock currently living who are that are no longer needed for production, but have an economic drain on resources and then also an impact on our climate. How does their pleasure factor into this move to synthetic meat?
Right. I think the transition to synthetic meat will be over a long period of time. So I don't think it will fully ever replace factory farming. I see it more as an alternative, especially as the population grows and there's more mouths to feed. And so in order to better feed them in the future in a more sustainable way. So that's how I would see it.
I was wondering if you found anything about if the companies that produce synthetic meat use ethics as their prime marketing strategy, or if that hasn't been sufficient and they have to tie in health or other factors that people might, I guess, care more about for themselves. Yeah, I was just wondering if you found anything related to that.
Yeah, thank you for your question. A lot of their branding does place ethics really at the forefront of the discussion. I know that the quote "real meat without slaughter" was actually one of the brand quotes itself that they use to describe their product, and they all emphasize the ethical benefits of consuming this product.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I had 2 questions. I'm curious if you've tried synthetic meat in your experience, and also about what types of meat they make synthetically. And is there synthetic fish?
Yes, okay, so I can answer all of those. Beginning with the first one, no, I haven't tried synthetic meat myself. It's currently only available at the Just Eats restaurant, which is in Singapore. So maybe if I go there in the next couple of years, I'll try it. However, the companies that I was researching, they all were pretty optimistic in their projections. So maybe in the next 5 years, I'll get to try it. And then in terms of the type of meat, a lot of the companies were focusing on chicken simply because that is the like number one source of protein that is currently being used, and so it's that was their main focus. But they make all types of meat. There's synthetic beef, synthetic pork, and synthetic fish, all in the works.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if this was something you looked into during your project, but was there any research on the bioavailability of all the vitamins and nutrients you normally would get from meat when you're looking at synthetic meat in specific?
Right. So what is really exciting about synthetic meat is that scientists can they can increase the vitamins and nutrients that are in synthetic meat versus simply growing them from the animal itself. You can actually add more to it, which is a neat opportunity.
Thank you so much, Jamie, for your wonderful presentation.